Welcome to the WDW News Today podcast. My name is Eric Morton. With me as always, or with me as most of the time, Tom Corliss.
Most of the
Hello,
time.
Tom.
Hello, Eric.
How are you? What episode is this? 57? Look at this.
7?
Yeah, 57. 57. That's the, it used to be the ketchup you could get at Disney World, but now we're on that red gold thing, right? We used to get Heinz 57. Now we get red gold.
I think that's a generational thing, calling it Heinz 57, because I never even realized that was on the bottle until someone brought that up.
Oh, yeah, that used to be a thing. You supposedly, when they had the glass bottles, you had to hit it on the 57 to make it.
Yeah.
Who knows? Good to see you back. You were out of town. I was out of town.
You were also out of town.
How was California?
Yeah, it was fine.
The last ride ever on the red car.
That was a nice last
You went out there
day.
just to say goodbye.
Yeah, because I love the trolley. Yeah. It was. You could watch. People haven't really been doing this, but we moved all the vlog content over to the WDWNT TV channel on YouTube. There is a full vlog from that day of our red car trolley adventure if you want to check it out. And while you're there, you should subscribe because that's where eventually the rest of the maiden voyage of the Disney treasure will be shared. Maybe by the end of the year, I'll have all of them out.
You went on an adventure. That went on adventures at the red car trolley.
I don't know. It was one of the weirder and crazier closings I've ever been to.
Yeah. Well, that's good, and I'm jealous. I don't know. I was cold when I was in KC, so.
And your team didn't even win.
Yeah, that's fine. They lost. It happens. I feel like
I have no remorse as someone who's been waiting a lifetime to see one. I don't.
Yeah, getting there I think is a big deal, and sometimes you win them and sometimes you lose them, and quite frankly, if you won every time, then winning wouldn't be that sweet.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you got to lose a few, and I didn't want to lose it, but hey, we lost, got outplayed. But no one's really even talking about that. People are talking about the halftime show.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I liked it. It was cool.
Yeah.
I like that someone got decimated on worldwide television. I'm always up for that.
No, I mean, record audience. I can't imagine what it must be like to be Drake to get like roasted like that in front of a record audience. Look, I kind of wanted to do a thing where all of us call our like my almost 80-year-old father and be like, "What'd you think of the halftime show, Dad?"
Yeah.
Because I know most of them are just as puzzled as probably their parents were if, I don't know, Bob Dylan or somebody that they didn't get was doing it. And hey, it was not a good night to be Drake.
I just liked it from a production standpoint. I thought it was really creative. I liked the whole
PlayStation
setup.
control. Well, what I like is
like the street setup and the choreography using the space, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was a neat one. It wasn't not one of my favorites. It's not going to go down as a top 10, but I thought it was a solid one.
Yeah, I thought it was. I think the anticipation of they would start. Look, I'm not like I don't follow like mainstream rap all the time.
Yeah,
I'm aware, as most people that have like access to social media are aware of like the beef that went down all summer long with Kendrick Lamar and Drake. But what I appreciated about it is so often these artists come and they try to do something so big budget and crazy and over the top, and that Rihanna's swinging from giant platforms up in the sky, and The Weeknd is in this big hall of mirrors and all this stuff, and it was basically a stage and performers, and I thought that was cool.
I will say, like, the one that's like that is amazing. It was Lady Gaga. I mean but she had to, right? Like that's her thing.
I didn't really have an opinion or care for Lady Gaga prior to that show, and I really thought that was a great show.
Yeah.
I mean, most people say like Prince, all these ones. What people don't think about is like when I was a kid, Super Bowl halftime show wasn't really a thing.
No. A lot of them were Disney.
Yeah, or they're Up With People. I think Up With People was a group that has the record for like the most performances Super Bowl halftime.
Disney was like the attempt to do something different at the time. If you haven't watched them, Don Dorsey, one of our I forget which event he did the presentation at, but he showed the Electrical Parade halftime show, and it's pretty wild.
Yeah, so here's the way I remember it. In like the early 90s, they got mad. The NFL got mad because people started stealing halftime audience from them. So there was a show called In Living Color. If you're not my age, you may not know. There's a show called In Living Color, and the best way to describe it is like if SNL were in prime time, because I think it was like Sundays at 8 or something like that, and it was more edgy comedy, right? So it's the Wayans brothers, it's Tommy Davidson, it's David Alan Grier, Jim Carrey, and
the birth of Jim Carrey.
Yeah, and so it was kind of a pretty irreverent. Fox back in those days was pretty irreverent. Like people don't realize this now. Back then, The Simpsons were edgy and like
Fox was when I was a kid. Fox was a revolution. And everyone wanted everything. Married with Children changed sitcoms forever. The Simpsons changed animation forever. And In Living Color definitely changed sketch comedy because Mad TV would have never existed and SNL wouldn't have changed as much as it did.
But anyway, what they did, and this is early '90s, right? Was they basically scheduled a live broadcast of In Living Color for the halftime of the Super Bowl. Yeah. So people switch over networks to watch what at the time was a very popular sketch comedy show. And the network, whoever was carrying the Super Bowl, lost a lot of eyeballs during halftime as people went over to watch In Living Color. So before that, they had halftime shows. They existed, but they didn't start booking like A-list. I think the next year was the Michael Jackson.
People weren't watching the Super Bowl for the halftime. Like people who didn't like football weren't watching the Super Bowl.
Right.
And it didn't become this thing that everyone on earth had to watch yet.
So like the next year was when Michael Jackson. That was like I think the first like big A-list like blowout spectacular Super Bowl halftime show, and it's been kind of like that ever since, right? Where they get
Although Disney got to do some after that, the Millennium Show.
Yeah,
was after that, which is memorable to me, but purely just because I love the Millennium Celebration. But I don't know that it's one of the best halftime shows ever. But as a Disney fan, it probably is.
I think the Super Bowl halftime show probably stinks for people who are live. Like I've been to I went to the Orange Bowl one year, and you get bigger acts for even something like the Orange Bowl.
Yeah,
and it was like ZZ Top, which is like, not maybe A-list, but like a pretty big act. They get, and the sound is terrible because it's coming from all sides of this cavernous stadium.
It's not set up for a concert.
I was in Miami. Yeah, it's not really the sound and everything. It's hard to tell what's going on. And I imagine something like the Super Bowl, you get distracted by all the normal halftime stuff plus the production going on and trying to keep the sound, trying to keep up with the sound and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Anyway, Super Bowl was what it was, and then it was very cold where I was, so I flew home. I was delayed, but they got snow right after the next day, and I'm glad to be home, even though we're getting ready to go travel again.
We got some time before DCA. We have a crazy couple of months ahead, especially in regards to Disneyland. Now, especially this week, we found out they're delaying the Walt show, and then also Small World's debuting a new verse. That'll be July 17th. Also, basically, there's a second kickoff day for the Disneyland 70th, and obviously, we have to be there for the first kickoff day, which is May 16th.
Now have to go back.
Yeah, so like our upcoming schedule is Food and Wine at DCA. Then a month later is Season of the Force at Disneyland Resort. Then I have some stuff going on in between there. Then Universal Hollywood's doing Fan Fest nights, which we're going to. Then, like 2 weeks after that is the Disneyland 70th kickoff. A few days after that is the opening of Epic Universe. A few days after that will be an event that we're not giving you details for just yet. And then July 17th now will be Walt Disney: A Magical Life, the new verse at Small World, and whatever else ends up being a part of that essentially second kickoff.
And we're not even counting things like, I don't know,
Flower and Garden.
Yeah,
the Disney World stuff's not even in there. But never mind. We don't have a date. We don't know when the Villain show is. We don't know when Little Mermaid is. Those are sometime in the not too distant future. Starlight Magic, like that's this year.
Spaceship Earth Bar.
When is Starlight Magic?
The bars.
I know you.
A couple bars opening.
Spaceship Earth is the one that's sooner. Yeah. I think the other ones are later. But there's a lot of unknown. There are unknowns in all of that, but those are the things we know are happening in the next couple of months.
We think DCA Food and Wine is 38,
39, I think.
39.
That's not bad. Compared to other years, it's very reasonable.
Well,
we'll be all right.
I wish us luck.
We'll be all right. We'll get it.
I wish us luck. We have the Wigs watching live. So our Patreon group is the WDWNT Inner Globe Society. You can find out more at patreon.com/WDWNT. They get access to early access to events, Merch drops, we've given them heads up on merch drops ahead of time before, discounts to events, and wigs at the $7 and up level are able to join us live when we film. So they are in the live chat right now.
Also, you might think this is a wig, but it's his real hair, so keep that in mind.
I tried to get Tom mad by saying that I liked his plush of Gary Gnu in the Great Space Coaster, and it kind of didn't. I don't think he. Some of you that are of a certain age might remember Gary
I only
Gnu
know the
in
song.
the Great Space Coaster.
It's a little out of my age range, and it's what's weird is I grew up in a time where pretty much everything from every generation before was in reruns somewhere because it was the boom of cable television and everyone needed to fill time. And so everything from every pop culture generation before me was on television. And then by the time I had grown to be an adult, that stopped being a thing. So like kids, like after, like maybe in the early 2000s, maybe later 2000s, that's when like all that stuff goes away. And so then kids stop understanding what the generations before them had. But I was lucky enough to grow up surrounded by all the things from your generation and all the generations before me. So I probably am a little more aware of pop culture than anyone under my age.
Yeah. No, Great Space Coaster. I remember that. And the thing I remember is like I never knew exactly when it was going to be on. Because back then it was harder to find like the TV guide, or it might not be accurate or whatever. And where I was accustomed to watching it when I was, suddenly it just wouldn't be on one day. And like, oh, I don't know.
And then it just like it wasn't on one day and then it was never on again, right?
And then I don't remember exactly how old I was when it disappeared. And then coming after that, another show that used like they're not Muppets, they're puppets, I guess. Was my sister's age there was a show, I think it was on Nickelodeon, called Today's Special. And the premise of that show was it was a department store at night, and the mannequin would come alive. They later made a movie called Mannequin. Mannequin would come alive and dance around with like the security guard who's a puppet, and they would go on. I don't know. I don't remember that. I wasn't into that show. I was into the Great Space Coaster. Right?
My Nickelodeon puppet show was Wienerville.
I've never heard of that one. So
with Mark Wiener, yeah, he did. It was a bunch of puppetry where his head went through like a cutout, and then there was a tiny body underneath, so like a tiny body. Yeah, it was funny at the time. But the three TV events of my childhood, I remember. Number one, you talked about how just one day something wasn't on anymore. Every Saturday morning, I woke up early and I had to watch The Real Ghostbusters. That was my cartoon, my Saturday morning cartoon as a kid. And one Saturday, it just didn't come on. And I was like, what happened? Obviously, we didn't have the internet, so we don't know. And then the next Saturday, it didn't come on. And at that point, I was like, is it gone? And the only reason that thought came into my head as a kid was we had already lost Pee-wee's Playhouse at that point because things had happened.
Yeah.
Luckily, in my childhood, a couple years, I was a little older, but Pee-wee's Playhouse came back in syndication eventually, which I'm grateful for. But then eventually they came out on DVD and I got to enjoy them all again. But then, and the only other thing I vividly remember as a kid was commercials. We talked about Fox. Fox was not only the big deal in prime time, Fox ended up with like a phenomenon in Power Rangers. And I remember the commercials leading up to the first episode of Power Rangers. And then I remember everyone at school that day being like, are you going to watch it? Mm-hmm. So kudos to whoever was in charge of marketing at Fox, because before that even first aired, it was already a phenomenon.
Yeah. I think when I was young, children's programming, there'd be some in the morning or whatever. If you happen to have cable, there might be something, or public television, which was even like kind of lower quality or not as didn't have as much. How do you say it? It's just people weren't as into that type of stuff, right? Everybody knew Sesame Street, the electric company, and whatever. Who knows what was on after those? But
Reading Rainbow.
But we. In general, for cartoons, when I was a kid, you had to wait until Saturday.
Yeah.
There was none of this, like, kids watching cartoons all day. Or, and heck, now there's kids just that have an iPad permanently attached to them. And, you see a kid in a restaurant or on a plane, and they have access to kind of the whole world. And back then, I mean, I'm Gen Z, and we talk about, like, drinking out of the hose and stuff, but that's Yeah, you had to go outside and play. There was no good TV during the day. There were soap operas during the day. Yeah. Right?
No, the kid stuff came when I was a kid. It was on every morning. Mm-hmm. So like they knew before that you went to school, they could catch you. Yeah. And so I remember vividly every morning, like I woke up when Pokemon came on and I'd start getting ready for school with Pokemon on in the background. And then they knew as soon when you came home, like you probably, depending what age group you were in, it was probably already on. Like 3 or 4 o'clock, you already had stuff on, and then by the time I was older, Saturday morning stopped being a thing, and now I don't even. It's not a thing anymore. Like Saturday morning cartoons doesn't exist.
Love this show called people are gonna figure out I'm old. Space Giants. So Space Giants was this Japanese giant robot, kind of. I don't even know how to describe Space Giants.
Well, now I know what to get for you from Japan.
But I never could figure out when I would see Space Giants. It kind of was a moving target. So I'd be at my friend's house or whatever, and my friend's mom kind of took care of was a babysitter, and so I would be at their. It happened to be my friend's mom was my babysitter, and. So we'd go there and we'd go down in the basement where they had it all set up for kids to watch TV and stuff. And man, I could never find Space Giants. And for whatever reason, it was my favorite show. You could see, like Billy can put up a graphic of what type of stuff you're looking at with Space Giants. I don't even know how to describe it to people, but I'd say it kind of looks like a 70s version of the Power Rangers or something.
Well, I mean, because Power Rangers Japanese too. They just refilmed the parts with the kids. In Japan, it was called Ambassador Magma.
That was Space Giants?
Ambassador Magma was the TV series when it aired in America. The show later aired in the U.S., dubbed in English by Krantz Films as The Space Giants. So now I know when I go to Japan to shop for Eric, I will ask them, Sumimasen, Ambassador Magma?
Is he the gold?
I've seen this gold man before.
Yeah.
So this is a thing.
I've seen this golden man.
But there's a lot, right? There is a lot of this, right? Voltron falls into this category. Then like later Gundam, like there's a lot that kind of falls in Godzilla. They all kind of fall into this category. Crazy?
Was Voltron the one where they all came together to form a giant robot? Yeah. But there's another one like that.
There's 40.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, then Power Rangers did it, but it's all very Japanese was. Oh, the cool thing is the toys that combine. And, of course, very toyetic. All of that was very toyetic because, the Japanese, whether they're children or adults, there's no stigma around having toys as an adult in Japan. So it was about making cool things for people to play with.
I love that Japanese stuff. And the funniest is, here's one that's very Japanese to me, is Pacific Rim. So these movies, very well done, actually. They're
definitely
fun movies, but the best part is these monsters come up from the ocean that are giant, right? A giant Godzilla-looking guy. I forget what they call them. They have a name for them, and they're like fighter planes. No, they can't hurt them. Oh, a nuclear bomb. No, that can't hurt them. You know what? The only thing that can hurt them is if we make a giant robot that punches them. So these guys are piloting giant creatures that. That's the only way you can hurt him.
It's very Guillermo del Toro. But what I would say for Guillermo is he makes the movies he wants to see. Yeah. And I appreciate that. He's like, it has to make sense. I'm going to make a giant robot movie where they fight monsters. And then someone's like, yeah, but it's modern day. Like, we have all this weaponry. Why would that not work? He's like,
of course that wouldn't
just
work.
Say it doesn't. And that explains it, and we can go on with our film.
Of course that wouldn't work. The only way to fight a giant monster is to make a giant robot to punch him. It's the best.
God.
If you're just joining our podcast for the first time, we tend to ramble for the first
hour
for a little while. If you like this kind of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Share us with your friends. We're looking to grow.
Not physically anymore. The festivals do that.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, we'd love to, if you want to be a Wigs member, love to have you. Otherwise, love to have you a subscriber. Click that subscribe button. It don't cost nothing, as they say.
Yeah.
Do we want to get into a theme for our discussion
today?
Let's
do it.
So I was talking to Tom, and the big news has been lately the price of a theme park vacation, specifically Disney.
Which the discourse has started a couple years ago, and it just continues to build.
And Disney kind of defended the price of a Disney vacation by saying, look, we still give all these options for people on a budget. Look, the number one thing that people say after a Disney vacation is how great the memories are of having it, and all this other stuff that they probably don't say, right? But if you've ever gotten a Disney survey, sometimes your only option is to either like select like this is the best thing I've ever had, or I did not go on a vacation. You know, it's like they have these surveys that are sort of engineered to get the answers they're looking for. I feel like sometimes they go conclusion shopping in their survey data, but. I think for a lot of people, the cost of a Disney vacation is out of reach now. And, look, we had articles last year that a number of families say they will go into debt to go on a Disney vacation. And some people in our comments will say things like, that's why I go to Universal, which is not in line with reality at all, because most of the research indicates that a Universal vacation is every bit as expensive as a Disney vacation. And so I wanted to go in and have this discussion with you, or you wanted to have this discussion.
I think we try to be timely, right? Yeah. We try to what is the discourse right now? Because I think people want to have the point of the show is we don't have a forum to have long form conversation. And there probably needs to be a long form conversation about, is that reality? Has Disney priced people out? Did it happen a long time ago? Is Universal actually a better value? Like, what is the reality of the situation?
And you and I grew up in two different ways, right? Where your family would come to Disney World. You had a relative who would sometimes make it so you could stay at a place like the Grand Floridian, or at least on property. I grew up. Staying on property or really staying at a hotel was just not something we did. We would drive a couple hours over, cooler in the trunk, come out to the car during lunch.
When you were a kid, there were no moderate or value hotels at Disney World either.
So my first time at Disney World, my first time coming to Magic Kingdom was 1989.
So there was a moderate, but it wasn't called that yet.
No, but so I was always, of course, jealous of that. Seeing people that are off to their Disney hotel and all that kind of stuff. And so as I got older in life, my expectations were lower in terms of that type of thing. So never did I go through the thing where I was like, I have to stay at a Disney hotel. It was fine for me to say, I'm going to stay at, I'm going to go to Priceline and do a name your own price on and get the Grand Cypress or get the Buena Vista Palace or get any number of off-property places that were above a certain level but below like a Disney level. Yeah. And so to me, I have always, this goes back my whole life, looked for budget options for where I'm going to stay because I'm not going to be in the room all night. Yeah. And so a Disney vacation to me is completely different from what a Disney vacation is to someone else, especially now that I live here, right? Before I lived a few hours away, or when I grew up, I was in Kansas. What a family is willing to spend and go through to, and able to do to give that magic to their kid of, hey, I see this picture of this family holding hands on a beach while fireworks explode at their hotel. That's what I have to have for my curated Disney memory versus someone like me who's, I make my memories in the park and then I'll sleep somewhere else. And I've rented timeshare. I've rented places that were like timeshares or a place that has a living room, kitchen, and multiple rooms, all that stuff, kind of like a DVC, but not DVC. I've done all those things before, and I've stayed at Disney resorts, and then later in life, lived a little bit of the DVC side and all that kind of stuff. And look, all of that adds up. Yeah. So I think my number one thing is that Disney's budget options for lodging are not as good as Universal's similar, like Cabana Bay. So if you think that the All-Stars is a better experience than you'll get at Cabana Bay over at Universal, I would tend to disagree with that. Yeah. But Disney does have a broad range of hotel options for people. But I understand this vacation is out of reach for most people. unless you're willing to make sacrifices, whether that's staying off property or driving to get there or only going to the parks a certain amount of days during your vacation. And so I think, it's worth it for us to look at the cost of these things and figure out what works for someone like us versus what works for someone who has, a lot more money than someone like me or someone who has less money. I don't know where the line is that people aren't willing to cross. I think for me, it wasn't a number. It has been at times a feeling like, what, I'm tired of getting squeezed. And I felt that at almost every theme park. I felt that at movie theaters. I really feel it going to an NFL game now.
Oh, yeah, any sporting event.
Yeah, sporting events are maybe worse. There are people, you go to a Broadway show now is insane.
Yeah.
Some of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Like even non-peak,
yeah,
off-Broadway. Like it's a night out anywhere is expensive, right? And that's part of the problem. I know every year on the news show when we talk about the price hikes, it's like tickets are up $5 for this day and $10 for this and blah, blah, blah. And I always say the same thing. And sometimes, the people that despise me on the internet make a big joke out of it. But I say, like, if that's the breaking point for you, then you probably shouldn't have been going to begin with, which taken out of context is I understand. I understand that. But at the same time, I've stayed at the Grand Floridian. I've also stayed at the All-Stars. And I have as good of memories at both. My memories at the All-Stars with my family getting, my father trying to get through the giant O and the football field and stuff like that. Like we had a great time. I have wonderful memories of staying at the All-Star. And I have wonderful memories of the Grand Floridian. And I think no matter what Disney resort you pick, as long as it's not Riviera, you'll have a great time. Look, we'll talk.
Wait,
we won't get into that.
No. Let's pause. What's wrong with the Riviera other than it's ugly from the outside?
It's ugly from the inside.
It has
a terrible lobby.
2 good restaurants.
2 phenomenal restaurants.
Good bar.
Yeah.
If you count Topolino's, is another good bar.
It's a bad pool.
The rooms are very nice.
Once you get 2-bedroom and higher, they're nice.
Well, I've only stayed in like the 1-bedroom, and it was fine.
I stayed in the closet. You have slept in the closet.
It was weird because the bathrooms had these 2 doors that you have to. I don't know.
The closet room, the bathroom was bigger than the bedroom.
I've not stayed in that.
Anyway, but also you share your amenities with a moderate resort next door, which you're paying way more than they are. So my hack is here's the problem with staying at Riviera. The problem is I think you should stay at Caribbean Beach and steal their amenities. I think you should stay at Caribbean Beach and go eat at Topolino and Bar Riva and Primo Piatto. I think you should go sneak into their pool. I think you should go. Like, that's the problem for me is like, I don't think the rooms at Riviera are nice enough for me. And you take the Skyliner the same as they do. You can even get on at their station if your room is closer. So there is no benefit to staying at Riviera other than to put your pinky in the air and feel like you're superior to other people. There is no benefit to staying in that building. But getting back, if I want to get back to the point.
Sure.
I do agree with you on the Universal thing. I think their value resorts in most cases, not all.
I've heard bad stuff about Surfside and Dockside.
I think if you can get the same,
it gets pretty rough around there.
That's junk. Surfside and Dockside are garbage. They're in a bad area. You should, under no circumstances, stay there. But the nice thing is, for not a terrible amount more money, at least Stella Nova is in a better location. It's not my favorite hotel, but it's in a better, safer location. And it's newer, and for a little bit more a night, which I don't think makes the trip unaffordable to someone, you could stay there. But in the end, if you're not staying at Cabana Bay, if you're going to stay at a value resort, you've made a mistake, because Cabana is the best value resort at any themed property in the world. And I don't give Universal a lot of praise because I don't think they deserve it. When they do deserve it, I will give it to them. Cabana Bay absolutely deserves it. They have very good pools. They have a lazy river. They have their own bowling alley. They have a tremendous counter service restaurant, a good bar. They're next door. You could walk to the water park. There's a million reasons to stay at Cabana Bay. The rooms are thematic enough. They're nice. Yeah. They're not the most beautiful rooms you've ever
But
stayed
you
in.
can get that little suite that's kind of just an extended with a little living room. And
But there's also the super cool rooms that look out of Volcano Bay, which are really cool.
Yeah.
So it's great. That Cabana Bay is undoubtedly great. But
and for the people that don't know, these are Lowe's hotels.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Lowe's operates.
Lowe's owns or operates all the hotels at Universal. I think Hard Rock owns the Hard Rock, but Lowe's operates it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Endless Summer, but I think the rest are owned by Lowe's.
But one of the value things we're going to talk about, and here's the argument, another argument that's going to come in that I just want to throw out the window now because I don't want to be mean, but I'm going to be a little mean because you're wrong if you say this, that you're undoubtedly wrong. The people go on and on how they're like, well, if I stay at the deluxe resorts at Universal, the Express is included, and look how much cheaper it is than the Disney deluxe resorts, and blah, 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 blah. I have stayed at all of the deluxe resorts at Universal in very recent times. In case of Hard Rock, and certainly in the case of Royal Pacific, those are moderate resort rooms and bad moderate resort rooms at that. They are old, they're junky, they're not good hotel rooms. You are paying for Express. You are not paying for that room. Now, if you want to talk about Portofino, those are nicer rooms. The Portofino rooms are undoubtedly nicer. They're not, terribly thematic or my favorite rooms, but they're certainly much better than Hard Rock or Royal Pacific. So you are absolutely paying for Express and not for those rooms. In the case of Disney, again, we have to live in reality, and the reality is there is far greater demand and far greater value to staying closer to a Walt Disney World theme park than there is to a Universal theme park. More people go to a Disney theme park. The wait times are higher. There is greater convenience there. So yeah, a resort on the monorail loop at Walt Disney World has to be more money than a resort at Universal that's near their parks because their parks are just not the same value.
Do you think that Royal Pacific rooms and Hard Rock rooms are worse than contemporary rooms?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. I would put contemporary below the Portofino rooms.
Yeah.
But I do think the contemporary rooms are at least nicer than, I don't know the last time you stayed at Hard Rock or Royal Pacific.
Never.
Hard Rock, that was like almost 2 years ago, and they were beaten up and real like dingy. It felt like I stopped at like a Motel 6 somewhere. They're not good rooms. They're real junky. And then in the case of Royal Pacific, I would say they feel like if the rooms in Grandestino Tower had been built 10 years prior, that's the vibe I get from them, which I don't like the Grandestino rooms either. I know people fight me on that, but they're just not good. At least Portofino, they feel modern and clean and nice and luxury. They do, in defense of Portofino. But the other two, man, they're bad. They're bad rooms.
Well, that's too bad. I've stayed Cabana Bay. I've obviously been in rooms in many of the other resorts. I've stayed at Portofino. Too. I've been in Aventura at your room, which was a weird.
Oh, we had the weird super wide room? Yeah, I forgot about that.
That has a couch that's just in its own little room with nothing to do.
This room tour is on the Universal Parks News Today channel if you want to watch it.
It is bizarre.
It's a weird room.
Full disclosure, in my previous life, our company did network infrastructure in many of these hotels. Yeah. And I'd been in Aventura when it was under construction. Also been in Surfside, Dockside, some of these others. But the Aventura ones are the biggest head scratcher. The one you had is the weirdest hotel.
It's a weird hotel, but I wouldn't tell you not to stay there because it's usually cheaper than Cabana. And you have the same proximity generally to Volcano Bay and some of that stuff. We haven't talked about Sapphire Falls at all. I think Sapphire Falls is a nicer resort and has nicer rooms than Hard Rock and Royal Pacific and Portofino, if I'm being honest. The problem is it doesn't include Express, which I think is nonsense because it is more of a luxury hotel and nicer than those other ones. I think it's a shame. I would stay at Sapphire Falls all the time if the Express was included.
So which hotels at Universal include Express then? Portofino,
Hard Rock. And Royal Pacific.
That's it.
The
okay.
So-called deluxe, yeah.
I'm not sure. I've spent very little time at Hard Rock. I think coming out of COVID, we all ate at the kitchen I've been there, and I remember going there a really long time ago when that resort was new, when it was like when the deck was shaped like the neck of a guitar, and you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But other than that, I've spent very little time at Hard Rock, so I have no opinion there. Now, I do want to ask you this: do you know what Disney advertises as their as their low price for a non-promotional single-day ticket?
Oh, geez, the non-park hopper?
Yeah, just a regular single-day pass to Disney World.
I'm going to be totally honest with you. Again, in the realm we work in, it is seldom I am asked what the ticket prices are, and it's seldom that I have an interaction with a ticket booth that requires me to figure that out, right?
I just want to start that conversation here.
I know. I'm telling you, I have no idea.
You want to guess?
My guess will be so out of date that it's going to be embarrassing. I'm going to say $169.
No, a one-day ticket, age 10 plus, from $119 a day.
Oh, so there are times where it's still $119.
Yes.
How many days of the year is it $119?
Well, we're going to get there.
Okay.
Do you know what Universal's lowest advertised price is?
$128.
$119.
Oh, they are the same.
Now, if you want to buy a ticket for $119, you're going to have to hunt pretty hard on their website. Both companies have done a really good job of disguising their pricing through different dynamic days. Like Disney, obviously, it's more to go to the Magic Kingdom than it is to go to other parks.
Yeah.
And I think Universal, when I was looking to find a ticket, to find a park hopper ticket, which their one-day park hopper at Universal is what? What do you think it is?
Whatever Disney's is.
$174.
Yeah.
Right? To find one, I had to go on their website and surf the calendar all the way to September before there was one day that was $174.
Can we stop for a moment before, because the step before this is to navigate these websites.
Oh God.
I'm going to tell you the hierarchy of functionality in major theme park websites. All right. So Disney's up here, which is bad that I'm saying Disney's up here because it sucks. It's a bad website, but it's gotten better than it used to be, which says a lot. Then underneath that undoubtedly is Universal. The Universal website, you can't find anything you need ever on that website. And the app is even worse. You can't find anything. It's somehow less intuitive than the My Disney Experience app, which we have all hated now for a decade. Somehow. And then underneath all of that, folks, I'm a real quick plug, Tokyo Disney Resort, which I think is still basically the Disney World website from 2005. It's that bad.
And I'm on a Universal website, and if I want to select a ticket, it defaults me to a 3-day ticket, right? So then you got to go and filter this out, all that stuff.
Is it like a challenge? Is it listed? It's the Universal 3-day challenge.
And keep in mind,
can you spend 3 days here?
This is only for Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure. If you get to Volcano Bay, a single-day ticket starts at $80.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to get into the exact figures of all the different. I think we could get really hairy if we start getting into all the annual pass things. Yeah. And the biggest differentiator right now is it's impossible to get an apples to apples comparison because a Universal annual pass, which I just bought their top annual pass, and it costs somewhere north of $800, right?
Yeah.
Not the one that has the water park. Do I have the one? Maybe I don't know.
You're not a 3-park Premier?
No, I have the regular Premier.
I have a 3-park Premier.
But it's only 2 theme parks.
Yeah.
Disney's top annual pass has 4 theme parks, and then if you choose the water park,
you add that on top
of that. So it's really hard to compare the value. But around $800 for. Let me make sure.
When your driving force is how much money. Look, because I know people in Orlando who have a family of 4, and when you talk about a family of 4, annual passes becomes a major investment, more so than even like a family vacation somewhere. So the decision every year is, the other problem is that everyone buys them at the same time. When the family of 4 decides to get annual passes, you're buying 4 of them all at the same time. And at Disney, when you're over $1,000 for annual passes, a family of 4, that's a lot of money to ask someone to spend at one time. Now, we're not going to argue about is it worth it or not, because I think if you go enough and you live here, it could absolutely be worth it. But from purely a money and affordability standpoint, if you look at those Disney tickets and say, I cannot afford $5,000 right now, but I can afford, if we go down the Universal tiers a little bit. I don't know what their next.
All right, I'm at their annual passes, right?
What's the next one down?
Well, these are non-Florida resident, so there is a little bit difference in there.
Yeah.
So the two-park premier annual pass, $904.99. That's for 2 theme parks. It includes parking. It includes express after 4, I think. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at. For the two-park, the next step down, the two-park, oh, man. This website,
the one
it just freaked out on me.
Yeah, see, it's a terrible website. Terrible.
Browse all products. I'm gonna go back to it. Browse all products. Your annual pass. UAP.
But either way, if it's $2,500 versus $4,000 or $5,000, that's a big difference. Now, is it what you wanted? Did you prefer to have a Disney annual pass? Yeah, but it's not financially viable, and so you buy the Universal, which I can't argue. Same with SeaWorld. I think there's people that then. Obviously we live in Orlando. There's a lot of people that work theme park jobs, and theme park jobs don't pay particularly well. And so there are a lot of people in this town who have families, and it's hard enough to make ends meet, but you do want to have some way to entertain yourself and your family. And I think, look, SeaWorld is not my favorite place. It's not a particularly great park, but at the price that it costs to take my family for the year to SeaWorld, I could see why that's appealing to people, and I could see why people make that decision. That makes sense to me, because that is a lot of money all at once every year if you have a larger family. But yeah, so the annual pass conversation is very different from a vacation conversation, I think.
Well, I'll say this. If you are in a situation, the two-park preferred annual pass is $629.99.
Yeah.
If you are in a position where you are going to come to see Epic Universe, it might be cheaper to buy an annual pass, right? What is it? It's about $500.
But it won't include Epic Universe.
No, you got to buy that on top of it.
Yeah.
But it's about $500 to just go to do that little park hop and go to Epic one day. I don't know. But by the time you factor in things like parking and everything else, I don't know. Maybe it may not be cheaper, but it might be close enough to go, I'll do the annual pass, which I'm sure is engineered that way.
Universal knows how to play the game. And the game is for day tickets, we can charge whatever Disney charges. Because that's the barometer. Disney is the barometer. And if we want the world to believe we're on the same level as Disney, then we need to match those prices. What's funny, though, is then when the reality sets in at annual passes. That's where reality sets in, where they understand we cannot charge what Disney charges because we do not have the same quality product. And some of it is quantity, right? You said there's less parks, but they will have almost as many parks if you want to count Volcano Bay as a theme park. But you can't. It's a water park. We won't get into that now. But they're going to have 3 theme parks.
But they're not going to have an annual pass.
They will eventually.
Eventually.
What will the price be on that? And if it's close to Disney, then I think they're going to run afoul, because no one's going to pay close to a Disney annual pass price for Universal. It's not going to work out for them.
And they know this. If you could be at Epic Universe, why would you ever go to Universal Studios Florida again? Right? You really like Gringotts? I can't think of any other reason.
For as much as people have gone off the last 10 or 15 years, Universal, they open a ride every year. How many of those do you want to go on again, other than Velocicoaster and Hagrid?
What's the newest
How many
ride?
of those? Let's look at what they added to USF in the lead-up to Epic Universe, shall we? They added
Minion Blast.
the baggage carousel ride, which is still laggy and doesn't really work, and no one likes it. DreamWorks Land, which I don't even want to call an addition because it's really a sloppy repaint of some junky things that were already there. They somehow built like bad Turtle Talk with Crush into what was a playground structure. I don't even know how. Nonetheless, what else have they done?
Well, they're getting rid of Rip.
That will undoubtedly be an improvement, but a mostly unthemed roller coaster. You say you want to play this game. You say you want to be on Disney's level. And in the case of Epic, there's a lot in there where there's a definite attempt, and we will see how close they get on May 22nd. But in the case of what they're doing at USF, like the bar on that park is still very low. Even though they have Diagon, which I love Diagon. I hate Gringotts, but I think that's a beautiful land.
Diagon and Gringotts is the only strong part of that park, right? There's no other.
Ride sucks.
Do you ever walk in that? Do you walk in a gate there and go, man, I can't wait to ride Fast and Furious Supercharged or
Jimmy Fallon
or Minion? I don't even know what the Minion thing is.
Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem,
or
Villain Con,
or Simpsons.
Oh my God!
What a bunch of turds! Back to back. But it's bad. E.T. Adventure is the only ride that I go. I gotta ride E.T. Adventure.
All the Alien rides are solid.
Anything alien related.
Gringotts. I love Diagon as a land. It's great. I hate Gringotts. I think Gringotts is an.
I don't hate it. It's fine. It's. But you go across the way to Islands and look. Hagrid's is really good. Velocicoaster is really good.
A better park.
I don't like Forbidden Journey because it scrambles my eggs a little bit, but it's a great ride. I think, I'm not a Hulk guy, but Spider-Man is good.
Best thing in
they have good rides over there. And the difference in quality between that and Universal Studios Florida is so stark and so offensive as a consumer that you're like, what? Why isn't this just one park?
USF is the ugliest major theme park in the world, even more than Walt Disney Studios Paris, because at least it's somewhat cohesive, that junky park, but USF is like all over the place. So you enter that park, it's like, oh, the Today Show, we must be in New York. No, you're not. You're at the corner of Wicked and Villain Con. What? Huh? But then you keep walking down, you're like, oh, the Hollywood Bowl. I must be in Hollywood. No, you're at the corner of 30 Rockefeller Center and Villain Con. And then you're like, oh, now I'm in New York. There's 30 Rock. And you're like, yeah, this part's kind of New York for a bit, but keep going.
No, the thing I hate is you get into like Sting Alley area and all that. And, you're basically like, hey, this is New York. Hey, it's the Blues Brothers, a distinctly Chicago act. And I was like, oh, so yeah.
And Optimus Prime is pointing at them.
Yeah. And so I don't mind that so much. I just think there's no good rides. And that park just feels like, look, God bless them for having Halloween Horror Nights, because that's the only thing that keeps anyone going to that park. And Mardi Gras.
That garbage park, it's the use of it. Yeah, that's what it's for at this point.
Well, maybe, and I might be a little bit too optimistic, maybe they used the Epic thing to do a major redo of some parts of USF. Somehow I don't think so.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a secret at this point. Simpsons is going.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be Pokemon, which I'm excited about, but I'm sure they'll find some way to ruin my childhood again, as they have several times. But we'll see. We'll see if that ends up being good looking and or good. I want them to succeed. I very much want them to succeed because it's something I care about. But they've let me down before, and they'll let me down again. But the problem is, again, like Islands had a better foundation. They spent more every addition they made to Islands, they at least kind of thought about it. In the case of Harry Potter, they picked a spot that worked. But at the same time, they've also ruined that park thematically.
You mean when you're watching a performance in Hogsmeade and the Velocicoaster goes whooshing by 50
enjoying my butterbeer and people on a roller coaster just fly by. Yeah. If Disney did that, man, people would never let them hear the end of it in a million years. And everyone there is just like, I love it here. Look at my butterbeer mustache.
I think, but I honestly think that your average person has much lower expectations than you or I do.
Yeah. No, they do.
And so they're just there to have a good time. And
someone
if you're
in
just
the
there
comments,
to go have a good time, then sure, it's great.
Someone in the comments on UPNT last week wrote, if you care about sightlines, don't come. And I think I responded I try not to. I was like,
I think Epic looks amazing. And from what I've heard from people who have been in there, for the most part, with the exception of you can't not see Grand Helios and some of these things.
It's very pretty.
That it's very pretty.
Yeah.
And some of these rides are going to be your Six Flag Vomit Comets dressed up, right? But in general, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff there.
Yeah.
And I do want to go there. I don't appreciate the pricing scheme and the gymnastics I have to do to go see it, and I'm not playing ball. Right?
If Disney ever did that, the financial revolt of the audience would be unbelievable. But
yeah. So look, I think I've said all along, I've been very consistent, that this is going to be good for everybody. Epic is going to be good for everybody, except maybe consumers who are going to get squeezed just a little bit harder.
And Universal Studios Florida.
We can hope, right, but we can hope that it will cause some sort of promotional and discounting and things like that on both sides to try to keep this going. Do I think Universal Epic Universe is a big threat to Disney? No. I think Disney is even, expecting to get higher attendance because more people are coming to Orlando for this.
Yeah.
And they're going to come there and they're going to do their mandatory day in a crap park to go over to the new good park. And, Islands is not a crap park, but it's, they're going to have to make choices and do things to go. So you're going to get an artificial bloat of attendance at USF, which everybody knows is a bad theme park, right? I would say, and this is going to sound cruel, in terms of attractions, I would say USF is worse than SeaWorld. SeaWorld has...
I might agree.
All those roller coasters. I mean...
That's rough for me because when I was a kid, I loved that park. But man, they have really gone out of their way to put meaningless garbage in there. And it's not because those IPs don't connect with me. There's plenty of things in there that should work for me that just don't because they're just not good. But SeaWorld barely has rides, though, right now, so I don't know that stands.
They have a lot of roller coasters.
They killed all their family rides, so it is all just coasters. Now, coaster-wise, I know people like Velocicoaster. Velocicoaster is not my favorite roller coaster in Orlando.
What is? Mako? Yeah. Mako is terrifying.
I love Mako, man. Oh, Mako's so much fun. Manta's really good,
You want to talk about sight lines.
Well, yeah.
Chef's kiss to the person that put the little climbing tower you go up, the stairs you go up to get to Mako next to a water treatment plant. It is 50 feet from a sewage facility. Yeah. That's not good.
I just like going to the Buffalo Wild Wings across the street. You just watch Mako go all day. That's Eric's street. Eric doesn't get to go to Buffalo Wild Wings. Eric.
Oh no, it's gotten so bad. The decline of Buffalo Wild Wings should be studied by every business.
For as much as you think Disney is declining, Buffalo Wild Wings has declined far harder and faster.
Oh, it's so bad.
I promise you.
It's so
Since
bad.
Bob Chapek became the CEO of Buffalo Wild Wings.
And now you get 6 wings for $24. Yeah, it's that Buffalo Wild Wings.
The servers are the football.
That Buffalo Wild Wings in particular, I went there. This is probably 5 years ago now. I went there lunch on a Wednesday or something, and they were closed to retrain the entire staff.
Oh man!
Oh man! Yeah, Buffalo Wild Wings. I still love their jerk sauce, but man, it's so hard to find a good one now, and they are so overpriced. Yeah, and their stupid CGI buffalo with the wings flying around in their commercials drives my dog absolutely crazy.
I want to say something real quick. We were pretty hard on Universal. I'm going to say something on the flip side of that about one Disney park that for the next 2 years is absolutely not worth the price of admission, and that's Disney's Animal Kingdom. Because we're about to be down another attraction in a few weeks with It's Tough to Be a Bug. So we're down Triceratops Spin. We're down the games. We're down It's Tough to Be a Bug. Now, are those headliners? No, they are not headliners. But in 11 months, you're also going to be down the Boneyard and Dinosaur. So you're going to have at least a year and a half where you're down not only all that, but I guess Zootopia will come up before that. So that'll be the saving grace. But also... I'm very worried about a show that's going to be that quick to put together. But yeah, I mean, they're down a lot of capacity, and there is not a whole lot in the replacement department. No offense to the Eco-Rhythmics. I love live entertainment. I think it's great that they added live entertainment, but that is not enough to fix this current situation. And I hope next January when Dinosaur goes down that they have some sort of additional entertainment plan. I have a wild concept. Disney, if you're listening, I have a wild concept for you. Hear me out. Hear me out for a minute. What if, instead of temporary entertainment to add capacity, what if you just go bring back the entertainment at Animal Kingdom that's missing? So what if you bring out the guy in the amp suit in Pandora? What if you bring back the drum circle in Pandora? What if you bring back any of the other atmospheric acts you've cut? What if you stage something in that empty Rivers of Light amphitheater? Wouldn't that be crazy? What a crazy, kooky idea.
Let me say this about Animal Kingdom. If you spin a wheel that has all the dining locations at Animal Kingdom listed, any of them would be the best dining location at USF. Any of them would be the best restaurant at Universal Studios Florida.
Today Show Cafe.
No.
Today Cafe is very good.
No.
I disagree. I like Today
I've only
Cafe.
eaten there once. It was not
certainly
good.
Better than Restaurantosaurus.
At least Restaurantosaurus has a bar.
Not for long.
Yeah, not for long.
Get on the floor. They got rid of the dino bar.
No, Islands of Adventure is still a good theme park. I have a lot of problems with some things at Islands of Adventure, but it's still a great theme park. It still has, especially if you like the thrill rides, right? Yeah. For thrill rides, you got, moderate thrill Hagrid's. Then you got Velocicoaster and Hulk. For the other stuff, you got some Jurassic Park. You got your Jurassic Park. You have your really bad Kong ride, which is the same as the really bad Fast and Furious ride. But then you have
I don't think Kong is nearly
Spider-Man
as
3D.
Bad,
They're the same bad ride, except that's cool animatronic.
Kong is a million times better than Fast and the Furious.
They're the same concept. Let's have a bus where people go through at 1 mile an hour and look at a movie screen.
I mean, at least we're in a Jeep, which makes sense. That would be the vehicle I would think I would be in when visiting King Kong in the jungle. In fairness, the King Kong ride is not great. I think it's okay. I think it's very okay.
They can't all be e-tickets.
No, and I think in a park that there's very little for everyone to do, I like that King Kong exists. Do I like that it's in Jurassic Park? No, I do not. I think that was weird.
Is it really?
It is.
It's kind of just
it's
wedged
the only
in there.
Island that doesn't have like a bridge to it. Like it's not its own island. Because you just wedge it in there.
And I like Dudley Do-Right. I
love Dudley.
I don't like walking through all the old comic strips that nobody reads. Heathcliff.
I know.
Nobody reads Kathy. Nobody reads Beetle Bailey. Like these are old, tired. Like
watch out, Blondie! You'll burn your stew.
Yeah. But overall, I think it's you can make a full day out of that park. They have a couple restaurants that are inoffensive, if not great.
I like Confisco a lot.
Yeah, Confisco, it's all right. Obviously the advantage there is you can walk right outside in the City Walk and get bad restaurants in every direction. But there's a couple.
Remember when Cowfish was good?
I've heard that, but I never ate at it when it was good.
It used to be my favorite. It's the only place I used to eat there. And post-COVID, man, Cowfish and Buffalo Wild Wings both took a tremendous dive.
Yeah, maybe same owners or something. I don't know.
Big Fire.
I still have to
Love
go there.
Big Fire. We have to go sometime. We'll go do a video review.
Bad, toothsome, awful. Like I think it's a cool
very
place,
up and down.
But their actual like entrees and stuff were terrible.
Yeah, it used to be pretty good.
And Antojitos that's not bad. It's not terrible.
Antojitos is good.
Yeah.
Antojitos is also, even for theme park prices, incredibly overpriced is the Antojitos problem.
Well, I would say in general, food at Universal makes Disney blush and stuff. Look, we just the food we just had at Mardi Gras, all of that was more expensive than it would have been at Epcot. Right?
It's so sporadic, right? Because
$19 cocktail.
Yeah, Universal is generally at their table service afraid to touch the pricing. So there are a lot of places like Mythos and the like where it's like, oh, this is still for a table service. This is pretty. Not even talking about quality, but it's like, oh, this is for the price. This is pretty good deal. But then you'll see as they start opening new stuff, the prices are getting amped up and amped up. But Universal, what they're bad at is going back and updating the prices of the existing restaurants. That's not their strong suit. Yeah.
You know, I am excited for Epic, and I hope it changes the game. And I hope it causes an increase in tourism, but somehow there's a part of me that wants it to cause a decrease in prices, and those two things are kind of mutually exclusive. So I guess we'll see how aggressive they are with pricing once they have gotten out of their little scheme that they're up to for the first foreseeable future.
I'm just dying to see the food prices at Epic. I'm dying to see it based on what we paid at the festival at Mardi Gras. I'm
not going to get over that elote old fashioned out of a jug for $19 for a drink this big. Look, we make fun of Disney for doing. I talked about this.
I mean, I stopped the DCA Food and Wine Review last year because there was a $21 cocktail. Universal,
DCA?
Yeah.
Most of those are $17.50.
Yeah, no, but there was one. The one at Smoke Jumpers was $20-something. I stopped the review and ranted for 5 minutes about how you cannot. That's nonsense. Yeah. There was nothing about that drink that was required that pricing, and Universal is not exempt. I know the fun thing to say on the internet is he just hates Universal. But the truth is, I think I try to give everyone a fair shake. But the truth is that when your cocktail is near or over $20 at a theme park, it better be damn special.
Can I say one more thing that annoys me about Universal? And look, I do like Universal, and I want Universal to rise up. I do want Universal to be a legit, like, look at them and they're on the same level. I don't. I think it's pretty wishful to say that.
All boats.
But when you buy an annual pass at Universal, your first day of parking is not included. What a cheap son of a...
the amount of money you just
obviously, you can just ride in with somebody who does have an annual pass or get there another way and not pay for parking.
We live in a world where we know you inevitably know someone who has every annual pass. But for normal, functional people out there, they may not know somebody to get that ride with.
So I just bought an annual pass to your place, and you're going to ding me for parking one time just as like a hidden cost?
Yeah.
Right? That's BS. And I think they're basically their ticket model for Epic Universe is offensive and gross.
Yeah.
And I think whoever came up with it, look, we knew they were going to do that. Whoever came up with it is a bad person. Hit me up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But also, it's Comcast, so no one's surprised when Comcast is mean, right? Like the Walt Disney Company is held to such a different standard. We feel so differently about them because of their history and their legacy. That history and legacy does not apply to Universal. Now, that being said, Universal does have a very rich movie-making history that I admire, but that has never translated to the rest of that company, and they have changed hands, an incredible amount of times in my lifetime alone. So, the same standards do not apply. But if you want to start comparing them, I'd be happy to. You're not going to like the comparison because it's not going to be what you want it to be. But yeah, I mean, I think Disney charging, obviously they're not going to lower their prices for DAC just because they're in the middle of construction. But I think it's kind of silly that park has so little to do right now, and it's like, well, it's the same price as all. Technically, obviously, when you get into the one-day tickets and such, it's different.
Well, you're going to see this happen at Hollywood Studios, right? Because they're going to have to close Rock and Roller Coaster to re-theme it.
Well, Hollywood Studios already lived through this, didn't it?
Right, and so then they're going to close Muppet Vision 3D, and they're going to build a whole new land at the same time. So,
but in fairness to Hollywood Studios, we have 2 new things opening this summer, Mermaid and Villains, and that will certainly help with Muppets being down. And we don't know when Rock and Roller Coaster is closing yet. So we'll have to wait and see. But at the very least, Hollywood Studios understands, I think there's an understanding there that they can't be down capacity in that park.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a consolation. I'm sorry that your e-ticket roller coaster is not available, but here's a puppet show with a fish.
But we don't know that yet. But the problem is we don't know that that's going to happen. We don't know when Rock and Roller Coaster is closing. They may wait till Monsters, Inc. is done. We don't know.
It may only take them a week or two to
That's also true.
hang props in it.
Yeah,
You know,
we just don't know at this point.
Hey, that looks like it used to be a donut. Oh, now we're going through animal's mouth. Like, rah! Like, I don't know. I have low expectations for that.
Black glass ball.
Yeah. I want everyone to try harder.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of the
Epic
conversation we had
Universe
last week.
is trying harder. So from a
For
creative,
them, yeah.
from a creative standpoint, I think Epic Universe is already like sort of a triumph.
It's the best park. It will out of the gate be the best park Universal has ever built. There is no doubt. Not that Original Islands has an artistic vision, which I love. Execution-wise, not so much. But I think out of the gate, there will be more great at Epic when it opens than there was at Islands when it opened.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see, hopefully I'm wrong, I think logistically getting in and out of Epic is going to be a huge pain in the ass. Just from driving back in that area and going to Stella Nova when you were there and stuff. Like that is, you can see it, right? You can see, like, they'll probably fix a lot of
I had anxiety
just
looking out the window at Stella Nova about May 22nd. I already have anxiety.
Well, if you go past, there's a point when I'm going to mess the name of all these streets up. Universal Boulevard and I think Destination is one of them. But when you're there, you're kind of parallel to the Shingle Creek Golf Course, and you turn left in there. And from the time you do that, every stoplight you encounter is programmed by a moron. They may change that. But with no traffic, from there, it took me like 6 minutes to get to Stella Nova, which I could see the whole time. Yeah. Because I'm sitting at lights. And you can picture these roads jammed up with traffic of people arriving or departing Epic Universe. Man, it's going to be something else.
You see how close those apartments are to Stella Nova?
Yeah.
The ones that are basically almost in the parking lot.
But look, there are apartments.
That's crazy.
There are apartments like at Universal Studios Florida that back up to the park. I mean,
you always could see them through the trees at Jaws. I remember that.
Yeah, you're like right there. Like,
but this is like the trees haven't grown in, so you're just like, oh, a space hotel, and they're like condos. What?
They're very close, very very close. And look, there are apartments close to the back of the Magic Kingdom that not nearly that close.
Yeah,
and
but not visible either.
I think Stella Nova is a cool looking.
For a value, they picked a nice way to make the building, like to still build a cheap enough building, but to make it look interesting and nice for people.
From far away, I wasn't sure. I was like, this thing looks a little haphazardly designed.
No, it's cool.
But when you get up close and you see those like glass, these tiles on the side of the building are kind of this different colors of glass.
Although apparently in hindsight, when water hits them, they're very loud.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
They're having, I don't know if it's the windows. The theory is it's the panels. When it rains, it's very loud in the rooms.
That's not good.
But, I mean, there's no soundproofing either. Like, I heard every conversation of the people next door both times I stayed there.
Yeah, so that's a thing, right? And Universal does that, I know. And I know from talking to some people that have worked on Disney hotels, same thing. So some of their even more luxurious properties, they don't do a lot of things that you would normally do with a 5-star hotel. One of those things is insulation on interior walls.
Grand Destino has not. Grand Destino was the first one I ever stayed at where I was like, it's like these people are in the room with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard someone coughing like all night long in the room next to me, which, I mean, unfortunate for them, but also me.
Yeah.
And like very thin walls. I get it, right? So, I don't think there are a lot of new hotels that are like super well built these days.
No, I think it's modern construction. It's not solely a Universal thing. It's not solely a Disney thing. It's an everybody thing. Things are just built like garbage now. Yeah. That's the problem. Like even, I like the Fantasy Springs Hotel, but there are certainly things where you look at the Fantasy Springs Hotel and go, like, this is not Hotel Miracosta. This is not the same thing. Yeah. Even with OLC and Tokyo Disney, you still see a decline in quality and craftsmanship.
That's not just hotels. This is, look, I bought it. My house was new construction when I bought it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I spent what I think is a lot of money for a house that's brand new.
Yeah.
And like, really, you brought in like the cheapest wire shelving you could. Really, there's not a ceiling fan. There's just a plate on the ceiling. Really, you have this light this light fixture that I can get for $8 at Lowe's.
But that's like the apartments down the street here.
Oh God, those were your old apartment. Yeah, that was so
junk,
cheaply put
Everything
together.
was junk, and that's you're in Celebration kind of, and it was super high rent, but all the finishes were garbage. The place literally settled in, and all the walls cracked and everything. Like the whole place fell apart instantly.
I like even when it was brand new, like the two doors close on your cabinets, and one of the knobs is here, and one of them's like there.
It might
and
still
you complain
like
about
that.
it, and they're like, "This guy's complaining about everything."
5 years later, the handles on that cabinet might still be like this. Literally,
they might line up eventually when it settles again.
They came to fix my floorboard. So number one, I have all this Disney stuff out, and so the guy comes in and he's like, "Oh, you guys really like Disney, huh?" I go, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you work for the company?" I go, "No, I'm just a big fan." And he goes, "Yeah, I used to work for Buena Vista Construction." And then he proceeds to, there's uneven floorboards. Somehow there's like corners of floorboards sticking up. He takes out a credit card and starts flattening them with the credit card.
Oh, they're like stick-on floorboards?
Or chips the corner off so it fits. Like, he does it in 2 seconds. And I said to him, I go, luckily I don't care about these kind of things, but I bet you run into people here who do. Because I'm sure I know people where it's like, people are going to notice that little chip in the floor and blah, blah, blah. The only thing the thing that set me off were the handles. Because again, like people come in and they're like, why are your handles like this? And you think I'm joking with this difference. You think I'm trying to be funny and tell you a story, and so I'm over-exaggerating, and it was really like this. I promise you the difference was this much. I probably have a photo somewhere. I will try to dig for it.
When I closed on my house, I get back from the close. I do the walkthrough, right?
Yeah.
We do the walkthrough, look at everything, and we go close the next morning. And then when I go into my house for the first time as the owner of it, someone had been in there, and they broke something on the cabinet trying to pull the dishwasher out. So the builder was trying to swap out my dishwasher with like another one that's somewhere else in a neighborhood, and they broke the cabinets doing it and got busted doing it, like trying to do the old okey doke.
Those switcheroo.
And so I just caught them on a few of those things, right? There was that they tried to switch. They switched the garage door opener, because in my document it said it was a smart garage door opener, and I get there and it's not. They're like, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, yeah, like then I feel like the jerk for like holding them to what they agreed to.
But yeah, I mean, you have to be like that. But at the same time, then you get accused of being a Karen, which is unfair. Look, you could be nice, like there's being nice about it, which is just being like, hey, this says this, and I would like to have that. Or you could, be mean about it. But then I wasn't mean about it because, again, living down the street in Celebration, my assumption was, well, some of these people are going to have some idea who I am, which is inevitable because we live within the theme park bubble, essentially.
Correct.
And so I'm like, well, I'm going to be very polite about this. But that got me nowhere. Like I lived there for 3 years, and 3 years later, in that last day, those handles, even though I had asked 8 times, those handles were still this uneven. It didn't matter.
Did you get your deposit back?
I did.
Okay.
I shockingly got the deposit. I think they were so happy I was gone at that point, because every week I just would like nicely message them like, oh, the Wi-Fi was out for 5 months. We didn't have Wi-Fi for 5 months.
Your Wi-Fi was
This
part
is,
of your...
by the way, this is Delamar in Celebration. Do not live there under any circumstances. They sold me a storage. So I asked, do you have storage? Because they have storage spaces. It's like, do you have storage spaces still available? Like, yeah, we do. We actually have one on the 3rd floor, blah, 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 or 2nd floor, whatever it was. And so I get it, and they give me the keys, and I go to it, and I get there, and the sign next to the storage unit says, bike closet. It's like, oh, I guess it was supposed to be a bike closet. So it's this room with no ventilation or anything. And I put my stuff in there, and I every so often would come check it out. I think like at one point, three or 4 weeks had gone by, and I go look in there. I got to go put something in there. And I go in, and there's mold. There's mold on everything. And thank God I showed up when I did, because it was only like on the boxes. It wasn't on the actual stuff yet. And I went to them. I go, well, you sold me a storage. I would like to be refunded for the 3 months I've had the unit. Like, you sold me a faulty unit, and now stuff might be damaged. Again, at this point, I had not really dug through everything yet. I didn't want to, I wanted to get proper gloves and everything to handle the situation. We just started pulling stuff out to save it. I didn't know what was damaged or not. But at this point, I'm like, look, you sold me something that wasn't a storage unit. I didn't have it for that long, 3 or 4 months. I said, can I just have the money back on the storage unit? And that's all. I'm not threatening, like, I'm going to sue you for ruining my property. I know that's a frivolous thing to ask for. Nothing's going to happen there because you're signed on with them, and you basically give that right away. So at that point, I just go, all I want is a refund for like the time that I've had the storage unit. I have to go find another place. That's all I want. And they wouldn't give me that. They wouldn't even give me that, even though they sold me a unit with mold. My favorite thing was they did not inform the people on opposite sides of that room, because there were apartments on either side.
Did they rent it to someone else?
They didn't. I don't know. I don't think they did. I think at that point, at least they never rented it out again. But they never told the people in the surrounding apartments that there was mold forming in the room between them. Like, come on. I eventually was that guy. I wrote notes out and I put them under their doors to tell them. I was like, just so you know, I had this unit between you and there was a ton of mold in it. I don't know if they've dealt with it or not, but I just want you to be aware for your own safety. And that's where I left it.
And they're like, if you'll pardon us, we have to go build Stellanova.
Yeah, probably. Probably. They're all the same, though. It's not Disney versus Universal versus anybody. It's across the board, right?
No.
And you see that with every construction project. And I know it's fun to every time Disney delays something or Universal delays something or whatever to dance around and be like, haha, look at them. They can't succeed. But part of that is because they don't do things themselves anymore, and because craftsmanship and workmanship is not what it used to be. And that's not necessarily either Comcast nor Disney's problem. And I will tell you, again, people will say to me, they're like, oh, Tom, you really got a lot softer over the, obviously physically. But they're like, Tom, as far as theme park product, you've gotten a lot softer as the years have gone on. And I've said to people, that's not because we're on a media list. That's not because of this. It's not because of that. It's purely because I have now been on the other side of the equation, and you begin to understand the challenges there are with massive undertakings, right? We had a construction project in this building. You get to see all the things that go wrong and all the delays and all that stuff. And what was funny is when we went through that, we then had the Stage 89 event right after, where it's an event with 19 Imagineers. Not even just Imagineers, like Ron Carmen, who was a scheduler. So you have not only the creative people, you have the execution people.
Right.
And basically, when we talked to them, like you told them the story of like, oh, we only got the keys a week and a half ago, and this and that and the other, the feedback you got from them immediately was, oh yeah, we've like on such and such project, I remember, but this happened and that, and this is obviously not even modern day. This is like 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Yeah. So
you start to understand that, and then also as a business owner, as someone who employs people, you understand that you have good employees, people that show up to work every day and really care about the company and try their best and obviously reward those people. But, I'm not going to lie and tell you and have a fantasy scenario where I tell you that everyone that we've ever employed was hardworking or an upstanding person. That's just not the reality of it. And the same is true of any business. I know we want to come out here and say every Disney cast member ever is wonderful and makes the magic and blah, blah, blah. It is impossible to hire that many people, whether it's Universal or Disney or whoever. It is impossible that every single person you ever hire is going to be great. So there are real challenges to all of this that I think we lose sight of as fanboys sometimes, myself included. I've done that in the past. There are times where it is absolutely like their feet have to be held to the fire. There are times. But sometimes when there's stuff like construction delays or things like that, sometimes it's not really something within the company's control, right? We talk about Shanghai Disneyland. Shanghai Disneyland was delayed because they tried to build a very nice Disney theme park in communist China. There are a lot of challenges that come with building a theme park anywhere, including Orlando, never mind communist China, where literally they didn't have electricians. So they went, it's a very famous story. They went out basically to farms and picked up farmers and had to teach them how to be electricians. And meanwhile, one of them almost fell into the pit at Soarin'. The guy grabbed them by the collar and saved him because he didn't know what he was doing. They had no idea what they were doing, but those are the challenges. Like, yeah, that park opened over a year later than it was supposed to originally. But at the same time, like, some of that is Disney. Look, I'll be that guy. Some of that is Disney's fault for wanting to do business where they wanted to do business. I'll be that guy. But some of it is also factors that they could not control.
I tend to be more critical of the things that are within their control.
Yeah.
Pricing is one of those things, right? Yeah, there's going to be project overruns. You have to compensate for that with some price tweaks here and there. But, pricing, well within their control. All the business decisions that get made to cut things, to handicap creative people who are trying to do something. Because I will tell you, the only thing worse than like some attraction or ride or experience that is not themed is one that only got halfway through. That's like a half-baked. Yeah. Those are the ones that make you laugh. And you're like, I would rather as a creative person either have my whole vision realized or not do it. And I think a lot of times you get these kind of half-baked things because some guy that went to business school got involved and wanted to take 4% of the budget for this and reallocate it to some other thing or pay a dividend or whatever they need to do. And so, construction running late for Tron Light Cycle Run, for instance, was not for regular construction reasons. Yeah. It was because business people chose to delay it for the purpose of moving money around the books, right? Those are, to me, worthy of being mocked, as opposed to this thing open late because something came up. And having worked years and years in project management, I understand that things come up, and it's always difficult. And if you're me down the line from someone like Disney, then you're getting it really hard because they are pushing you very hard to do things that are not possible because of things that someone else screwed up in another part of the project. Yeah. I'll just say we worked on a large project once where there was a very small timeline because the project was going to float away and pick up customers. And it is very hard when people are shutting down the network to work on the network. Yeah. And when you have people doing things like that, that's, it's maybe not your fault, but you're going to get blamed for it. So I'm sure the people downstream or upstream or however you want to put it, the individual contractors and small businesses that are working to support this are doing their best and probably having trouble sleeping and all that kind of stuff, getting these things across the line.
Well, that's why no one wanted to come back after the Wish.
Yeah.
Because every third-party contractor had the worst experience of their life.
Yeah.
Which, thankfully, with the Treasure and the Destiny, you're not seeing that this time around. But, I know there's other ships that are different, and, we'll see what happens. But either way.
Sometimes there are ships built that turn out to be a ship show. I guess we'll find out.
That happens. But I was going to say is the other thing that's been enlightening, I think, the more we've gotten to interact with people who have done this professionally, creative or schedulers or whatever. Dave English at Promising Tomorrows told, or in the lead up to Promising Tomorrows during one of our 3-hour phone calls, told the story of opening Pirates of the Caribbean at Walt Disney World. Now, you and I know Pirates of the Caribbean as like one of the premier attractions in the world. It is like it's one of the things that everyone in the world knows. Like it's a beloved attraction. It's not something that has any, there's no black mark on that attraction. But then Dave English talks about, he's like, like when we got to December of 73 and it was time to open, the ride didn't work. So like basically 24 guys from WED were manually operating the ride for a couple weeks so people could ride it. And then once the crowds had dissipated, we closed the ride for a couple of months so we could finish it. And if that happened today, we would all jump on Disney and like beat them senseless for it, and Universal too. But at the same time, like, these are monumental undertakings, and sometimes it is. And I agree. I totally agree with your point. Where like the decisions to get mad at are when someone looks at Hollywood studios and goes, well, because we're closed for COVID, we're going to fire all the Streetmosphere people and we're never going to bring them back.
Yeah.
That's a whole different ballgame than we tried our best. The ride it's ambitious and it's cool, but it doesn't quite work yet. So we'll see what happens.
That's how I feel about Genie Plus / Lightning Lane 2, which is they're addicted to this new revenue stream, which is substantial, by the way, by many accounts. I won't get into it, but by many accounts, huge revenue that they're addicted to, and they don't care that everyone hates it. No. They're gonna keep up because they have to keep that revenue now. It's allocated for something else. They're used to having it for something else that they're doing. Pirates, though, it seems like was it one of those Imagineering stories or Behind the Attraction where they did Shanghai Pirates? And they had the same kind of thing where they had a major, the water issue.
They didn't know the boats were going to be that heavy with guests in them. I guess they didn't. It just didn't. The computer didn't seem to indicate it would be a problem. And what happened was it's on multiple floors.
Yeah.
And it was pushing so much water into the basement. Those boats were pushing so much into the basement that it was flooding.
Yeah.
And so they had to like create a makeshift water pump thing that was outside the building. You know what? I think those are the best stories, like Dave English's story, whether that's in 1973 or those guys in 2016. What's amazing is these people develop something incredible, but then something goes haywire, and they problem solve and figure it out, right? Rise of the Resistance. The cannons. Yeah. It was faulting the ride. It had to be stopped. Some people at Disneyland, some maintenance people or whoever, took it upon themselves to figure out the problem. And look what they did. It took them a little bit, but they figured it out.
The Hatbox Ghost.
Yeah.
How long did it take to figure out the Hatbox
Daniel
Ghost?
Joseph, in his free time, that man in his free time, in his home, was like, I think I could figure this out. He figured it out, and as the story goes, he asked Tom Fitzgerald, Tom, will you come over? I had to show you this thing I've been working on. And they go in the garage, and Daniel flips it on, and Tom just looks at him and goes, we have got to do this.
Yeah.
That is the magic of all. That is the real magic of Disney, is these people, what they problem solve and figure out, and the actual magic they create from it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're way off the topic of pricing.
Anyway, vacations are expensive. We'll see you next time.
But I think, like we talked about before, if we want to talk about hotels and vacations real quick, I don't think a Disney World vacation is less obtainable than it was in the 2000s. I don't think in 20 years, obviously in 20 years there's inflation, and in 20 years Americans make considerably more. A great example. We know someone who was a parade performer at Disneyland in the late 90s, early 2000s. Do you know what they made an hour? $5.50 is what they made. Do you know what someone in that position now makes? I don't have the exact number.
Over
in front
20,
of me.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of that is America. Part of that is, how much we make and how much Disney has to pay people, right? We fought to get cast members a better living wage. Some of that's going to be our charge, and we have to live with that. And I'm okay with that because I don't want, like I said back then when we walked the picket line and it wasn't a real picket line, but you get the idea. When we walked that line, we said, like, I don't feel comfortable going to these parks and making a living off of doing this in a world where these cast members are struggling. And at the same time, I think I said at that time, I was like, if my ticket price goes up a few dollars, so be it, right? That's not fair. It should come out of some of the executives in the Walt Disney Company, but it's not going to happen. Right? And maybe someday Maybe someday something will shake the Walt Disney Company to the core, in which we will have a new day. But probably not. Corporate America will probably continue to be what it has always been. And the other point I always see is people have been bringing up, the international parks are so much cheaper. Number one, Disneyland Paris, Shanghai Disney, and Hong Kong are not cheaper. These are not cheaper places to go. I will tell you because I've been there. The hotels at Disneyland Paris are way more than Disneyland or Walt Disney World. Wow. Even for the junky, crappy ones like Santa Fe, they are super overpriced. Santa Fe is way more than Pop or Art of Animation or All-Star. So, and the tickets are not terribly different either. The food's expensive. Paris is expensive to go to. Hong Kong and Shanghai, pretty equitable. They're not far. Paris is hotel-wise, Paris is the most egregious, without a doubt. Hotel prices are still on the higher side in Hong Kong and Shanghai. Ticket prices are still on the higher side. They're not, especially Shanghai. Shanghai, I think, is more than Hong Kong. And then we're going to talk about my favorite place in the world. We're going to talk about Tokyo Disney. Now, Tokyo Disney, the tickets are very reasonable for us. That's the important thing to remember. I tell you to go there because it's a good deal, because the American dollar is strong. Their tickets are cheap. Their hotels, again, we just booked a Park View room at the Tokyo Disneyland Hotel for $600. You know what I can get at Disney World for $600? Probably a view of a garbage chute at a deluxe resort. And at the Grand Floridian, it would be a view of a garbage chute. Same thing, the Contemporary too. The Contemporary, I'd be in a garden wing for $600 a night. Tokyo is cheaper because of the country it's in. The country it is in, the people are not, for the most part, paid very well. They're not well paid. The average earning amount is considerably lower. And so for them, while we're dancing around, all happy, like, oh yeah, my park ticket was like $70. That is a big investment for them. That they pick very wisely. If they love Disney, they very wisely pick the days that are important to them to go, because that's a big investment for them. It's probably about the same, if not, honestly, I think we've done the math, and I think it's worse for them than it is for us to even go to Disney World if we figure out what the average earnings are. So yeah, it's great for us, and I tell you, this is the time for you to go because you live in America. You're very lucky, and your dollar is more valuable than the yen is, and their ticket prices are low, and it's a good deal for you to go. Now, when I was there, the yen was even weaker, and the whole country wanted to revolt against all tourism. They were trying to implement taxes on us and all sorts of things. And I don't blame them, because that has to be frustrating. That has to be frustrating to post-COVID really feel like your country is struggling. And obviously the tourism is good for you because it makes money, but at the same time, you have to be resentful because you're like, well, I used to have a Tokyo Disney annual pass. And I used to go all the time, and I could afford that. And now that's gone. But now, I have to buy day tickets, but I can only afford 4 to 6 day tickets a year, maybe a couple more. But I go considerably less. And these Americans are coming and flaunting their money and throwing it at the park. And I understand why they were using Disney purely as an example for a wider problem, which was the whole country. But that's the thing you have to realize is, Disney is not, I saw people commenting like, oh, look how affordable the foreign parks are. They're not. For us, Tokyo Disney is. For the people that live in Japan, it is not.
Aren't their hotels pretty aggressively priced at Tokyo, though? I mean,
the Fantasy Chateau and that hotel, absolutely. And Miracosta can be. I think for them, again, I think a one-night stay, and that's why they don't get, I know they only have 2 parks, but they don't really get more than one-night stays. People book one-night stays because that's not only what they can afford, obviously there's less to do, but not that much less, but it's what they can afford. They can afford, this is my big splurge. We're going to have one night in this beautiful hotel and our 2 park days. And that's what most of the country can afford. And now what they're seeing is the Fantasy, for those that don't know, the Fantasy Springs Hotel is split into 2 sections. There is the Grand Chateau and what is it, the Fantasy side? I forget the name of the other side. The Grand Chateau is the super expensive side. And what we're seeing is that hotel has been impossible to book since it opened. And now you see those Grand Chateau rooms come up daily because no one in that country, a lot of people in that country, I should say, do not have that kind of money to throw away at that. I think it was a huge misstep by OLC. They didn't need a super luxury hotel. But meanwhile, the Fantasy Chateau, I think it's Grand Chateau and Fantasy Chateau, The Fantasy Chateau, which is pretty similarly priced to Miracosta or Tokyo Disneyland Hotel, is still nearly impossible to book. The demand is there. That's a far more reasonable price point for people. But what they're seeing is they are kind of seeing their audience revolt against some of the pricing. And they're seeing it that you thought you needed this super epic, luxury hotel that's very limited. But even with a very limited number of rooms, you're now already seeing demand below where you thought it was going to be. But so that's the thing is I want to say that I do not think other Disney parks in the world are cheaper. I don't think other Disney parks, other Universal parks in the world are cheaper. They're all priced pretty similarly based on the country they're in.
I would say
what people
just
make.
one aside, tickets at Disneyland are extremely expensive right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, my opinion, is in Southern California, Universal Studios Hollywood is not really a competitor with Disney. So nobody's going, man, do we go to Universal Studios Hollywood for our vacation or do we go to Disneyland? And I think it's reflected by their aggressive pricing. Look, yeah, people in Southern California tend to have be more accustomed to high-priced things, right? Yeah. Housing costs are extremely expensive.
It's
Everything's
like
more expensive there, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's not weird to them to pay I think I paid $250 for a one-day park hopper there before when I was between Magic Keys and the Magic Keys very aggressively priced. And yeah, if Universal were down in Anaheim, then there might be some sort of competition. But I don't think Knott's is helping bring Disney's prices down. They're probably using Disney to float their price up a little bit. And so I think it kind of depends on where you are in the world and even where you are in the United States. Let's knock on wood and hope that somehow theme park prices either stay steady for a while. Yeah. Look, and I kind of finish with this. You said that Universal always changed their pricing to keep up with Disney. Yeah. I remember when we were all watching to see who was going to be the first to crack $100, and it was Universal. It was not Disney. Universal cracked the $100 barrier for theme park ticket, and then Disney immediately followed suit.
Although some of that I think was someone on the internet had leaked what the Disney price increases were going to be. I don't know who would have done such a thing. Someone who perhaps was a huge terror to the Walt Disney Company for 15 years. And maybe they were like, well, let's just get ahead of them now and just do it today. So that was a little bit of that. But I think Universal's, I think their policy has always been if Disney raises it, then we're going to raise it. And it doesn't apply to APs, but it applies to everything else.
Yeah, follow the site. Whenever one of them has a price increase, the other one follows immediately.
It's always at the same, about a week apart at most.
If you make a diss track about Kendrick Lamar, 20 minutes later, he's going to come out with a diss track about you.
Yeah.
So we've come full circle to the Super Bowl now.
And so our journey must end.
Thanks for joining us. Again, please subscribe, like, all that nonsense.
We almost talked about the topic.
We almost talked about theme park pricing. I think the title of this would be what?
More universal.
It's not really a universal. I mean, we're just talking about pricing.
Yeah.
And I think it was important to point out because a lot of people erroneously believe that Universal is a cheaper option.
Yeah.
And it's not only not cheaper, it's at least identical and in some cases more expensive. Yeah. With the exception of, I think, a couple of the hotel options might be seasonally depending.
Hotels are cheaper, but I think you could acquire a Disney hotel for roughly the same price if you wanted, except for dockside and surfside. I saw someone in the comments say they had a fine time there, but but they were like they could have cleaned the room a little better, and that's part of it. Like I don't think anyone should stay at dockside and surfside. If that's your price range, there are nicer third-party hotels in Orlando, or maybe even in that area, perhaps you could get at the prices of those two hotels. If we're
one day, I want to stay in that round place. What's the presidential or what's that round tower? It's like a cylinder.
Oh, the one that I've always wanted to stay in.
Oh, you do too.
It's now 4 Points. It's a 4 Points.
Oh, it's got to be terrible.
Yeah, it has horrible reviews, but I desperately want to do it. Yeah. I think we're talking about doing it the night before Epic opens because we have to be in the area to get into Helios Grand. But we might stay there. My dream might come true, and we get to stay in the crappy,
round hotel
with the gold globe thing on the top.
Thing.
Yeah, it's been my dream to stay in that wacky, weird little dumpy hotel. Yeah,
I like wacky, weird, dumpy. Look, what last year was it? Food and Wine last year when we stayed at the Alpine Inn. So when I was a little kid, I remember driving past there and being like, "Oh, this hotel has like fake snow on the roof and like fake icicles hanging from it." The Alpine Inn, it's just south of DCA, like just south by a few feet.
Yeah, it's literally
and
behind
we finally
Cars
stayed there.
Land.
It was kind of a letdown, but I got to stay there. All right, thanks anyway for joining us. I guess we're going to see you next time. We're going to hang out with the Wigs for a minute, have a little post show, but we'll see you next time here on the WDW News Today podcast.
We'll see you real soon.